Hey everyone, welcome to the Didoc Life Mastery Podcast, where Kori and I always have appropriate social distancing, 2,000 miles apart every day.
There you go.
Kori, how can we talk about anything else? I mean, right now there is a lot of disruption, not just fear and panic, a lot of things in the news, but real disruption. As we talk about what this is going to do to the economy, there are people right now dealing with an inability looming in the next week or two to not be able to pay rent, not pay their mortgage. Hourly workers are just done for a while. There could be no end in sight in terms of a known quantity. What they were saying, look, we're going to take a 2-week pause. That's turned into maybe it's going to be 2 months to maybe it's going to be to the end of the year. Now this morning they're talking about it looking like it could be 18 months because certain pockets of this are going to keep popping up. And I think probably the biggest thing that we could ask of you as a psychologist, instantly your voice was kind of playing in my head. What would Kori say? What would Kori do in this situation? And it all came, it all came back to that time of just like, okay, let's just pause. Let's think through this with some empiricism. One of the things you always ask, what can I change right now? What may I do at this moment that will have real impact instead of just reacting? And I think we probably need to start there.
Yeah, Joe, I would really be interested in hearing more of what you thought I would say, but it's a strange time because I personally feel a little, we're talking about social distancing, I feel a little bit distanced from the impact of it because, I work from home. And so I do feel as if those individuals who already work from home don't necessarily feel that the intensity of it all. I'm in a hot spot. I'm in California, and it is interesting to see what's going on here, and everything is ground to a halt. And this isn't any different than anywhere else, but, grocery store shelves are empty. And, I've found myself like going to Amazon to look for certain things like, oh, I'm running out of laundry detergent, and not wanting to go to Walmart or not even wanting to try to get to Costco. But, I say this because, yes, I think it is really important to be able to ground ourselves and center ourselves and ask the question in the midst of the fear and the chaos. Okay, what is it that I can influence? Because that's how fear generates, is when, we're trying to close the gap between an actual scenario and a perceived scenario. And we're drawing all of these conclusions that we don't even necessarily know are going to happen. But for those people who are in the situations that you're in, the fear and the anxiety is going to be much greater than for someone who still gets to work and can make money and can, for the foreseeable future, see that they're going to be able to pay the mortgage and or get some groceries and feed themselves for a longer period of time.
Yeah, I see everybody in society right now just dropping down a couple levels on a Maslow's hierarchy of needs to, okay, like, do I just have enough food at home if I have to be quarantined for a couple of weeks or a couple months? What if I do have to dip into my savings? I think of the Great Depression where, probably in modern history, the first time that people really felt zero hope. And you heard about traders jumping out of windows and, people having to make the decision of which one of my kids gets to eat today. And that's the base fear that everybody has. What if it got that bad? And oh my gosh, look at all the TV shows we love to watch. The Walking Dead, and just all of those things that say this is what it could get to. But I would say that could be so far in the distance, and you just never know. Part of that inner Kori voice of mine that says, okay, just take a step back, don't catastrophize, don't project into the future what may happen, what is happening, and what do you have control over. And let's lay out some plan Bs and plan Cs, and if this happens, then this is what we can do. And just take a more logical approach,
Pragmatic.
even if it takes, just getting out a pen and paper, writing some things down and say, okay, let's cover all these bases.
I think that we need to acknowledge first just that fear reaction is so normal. Let's normalize that first. It's a base human, probably the oldest evolutionary reaction next to disgust, fear and disgust, which is really interesting because when we look at what we're facing right now, there's this unknown entity that's in the air or inside of us. And we may not even know that, and no, I'm not trying to scare anyone, but this is what we get into when we're talking about, I may be walking around with this unknown entity and I don't know what it's going to do to me or potentially do to other people. And when contamination, like that can breed a real sense of disgust and fear, and the need to really just be super hyper vigilant about cleanliness and staying away. And so first, let's normalize that reaction. Our base need is to survive. Okay. And so when you, I mean, there are plenty of fear mongers out there casting a lot of doubt. And so part of it too is being able to back away from all of that and go to some reputable resources too, and not put ourselves in positions where we're being inundated by information all day long. As I see you, Joe, posting, things from very relevant sources, you amaze me for one thing, because I'm like, how is he doing this as a health scientist and putting all this great information out for people to keep them grounded in what's real and true, and managing a business and taking care of clients? But you've always been that way. And I tend to be like, okay, I'm going to spend 5 minutes in the morning listening to news, and then maybe 5 minutes in the afternoon while I'm eating lunch. But it seems that you're just, Joe, you're able to take it in and synthesize it a lot better maybe than a lot of us are. But
well, my goal there, Kori, is simply, as I see people respond and react, and some of this, of course, is just, organic, how my brain works in terms of just speed and, not always a positive, but I see these reactions, and I understand the push and the pull between our individual needs and our social needs, and just that great tug of war that's always inside of us. And people's initial responses, what they were feeling in terms of that fear and anxiety, was very easy to project. I mean, how many people did I see in social media saying, everybody needs to stop being hysterical on the news? And I'm like, I don't see anybody on the news being hysterical.
No.
I just see all of our reaction to it as hysterical because it's scary. I mean, that's the thing. You're looking at these countries like China and Italy going through this. Yeah. And that's why my goal is to just cut through that. So many, I mean, I even had people posting things that were just wrong and not factual, that were dangerous. It was literally some kind of a troll bot trying to hurt people. And so I just feel like we need just to keep people focused on the reasonable things. Right. But let me tell you one thing, Kori, before you continue. Even with that being part of my personality and my goal, my wife and I have, over the last couple of weeks, thought, hey, this is gonna, we could be self-quarantined or something, so let's go get a couple extra things at the grocery store, and we'll do that. And then over the weekend, she and my kids went and said, well, let's go get a couple more things. Mm-hmm. Well, today, after hearing some of the news happening in Italy, where their death rate is doubling every day compared mm-hmm. to the day previous, and saying that, California is just a week behind that and this, I said, okay, we need to make one last run to the grocery store. Just one last one. Like, what if we're really homebound for a couple months? And it's such a weird switch. It's totally physiological, but I even just sat in the car because I'm thinking, hey, let's, the social distancing in the stores, they don't want too many people taking up space. I'll let Tracy go in there. Well, she texts me and says, get in here. I need help. These people are insane. So I go inside and just seeing people like racing down, like I went into panic mode. I'm like, get this, get that. And I'm, you know, Tracy had a couple things and all of a sudden I come out with like 6 months worth of groceries because I got swept away in that. It's just like, wow, the adrenaline starts going and you really do reduce down to a survival mode.
Absolutely. And what you're describing, there's a word for it. It's called social contagion and emotional contagion. You described it perfectly, getting swept up in the emotions of everyone else around you. And it's not hard to do. You're very self-aware and you're like, holy crap, like I am in this now.
It was a death race, man, as soon as I was in there.
Yeah. So, you know, how do we manage that? I think that, you know, you have a sense now, if you go out and you go to the grocery store, what it's going to be like. And so how can you prepare a little better? I've had the thought too, because Ben usually does the grocery shopping. I have not actually been to the grocery store since all this happened. I had planned on going to Costco, and then a friend of mine sent me a photo where there, a half an hour before it opened, there was a line around the building and into the parking lot. And she's like, I didn't go in. I did not wait. And so I just like, I actually have been avoiding it because I don't know what to expect. And I think that can be a beneficial strategy. If we don't know what to expect and we're not in sort of a very dire situation where we absolutely need something, like avoid it. But in terms of the mental and the emotional piece, what is really helping and can help right now is to notice it first, observe it, kind of give it some space. Like, okay, this is happening, but all of this other stuff is happening too. I have all of these other things in my life. I have my family, I have my children, you know, ideally, most of us still have a vocation. We have a way to make money. If you're fortunate with that, let's ground ourselves in the things that we still do have and broaden the picture a little bit. Yes, this is here, but all of this other stuff is here too. That's environmentally. Just internally, this is where I think we really have some things to move on, like our character strengths. In the Mental Edge Academy right now with Dr. Jennifer Souders is helping me lead the curriculum this month. We're addressing, especially in light of what is happening right now in the world, how to call upon our character strengths. And in particular, there are 5 that are key for being able to rise to challenges and be resilient in the face of difficulty and adversity. And so, you know, it's love. And, you know, you've been posting some things recently about how you see people banding together and really helping each other and giving people money and goods, giving things away to take care of other people. You know, you were swept up in the store to take care of yourself in that moment because you saw everyone else doing it. But there are these acts of kindness happening. And I think when we can take ourselves out of the center of the picture and we think about the others in our lives and how we can love them and be compassionate towards them, it relieves fear. It relieves fear and it relieves anxiety, and it gives us this sense of there's more spaciousness in our lives. So there's these adaptive sorts of things we can do that are more emotional and internal. And then of course there are the practical things like washing our hands and not touching our faces and not going out if we don't have to. And, you know, being very creative in terms of how we get our social connection and sense of belonging. Because the other thing I've been thinking about, Joe, is, you know, we're having this pandemic. We already have this the epidemic of loneliness in the United States. Just people being very isolated and alone and not knowing like who they can call upon and not having any resources in terms of real bodies, people that they can talk to. And so that part has been concerning for me. I actually got a letter from the Department of Regulatory Agencies in Colorado. So they govern all of like the counseling boards and the different licensures that you can have. And they said, you know, even if you're not if your license isn't active right now, but it's been on hold, or you've been inactive for a while, like, we're calling upon all like mental health workers, because we need you right now. We need you to be helping people and helping people to not be isolated and alone. It's really challenging.
Yeah, the medical community is doing the same thing. They're asking physicians and nurses to come out of retirement and don't worry about relicensing. That there's just please just jump in. And there is one caveat that I would say to the social isolation. I almost don't like that people are using that term, because it does compound that feeling of loneliness, because I think this is a time, as you started this topic with, to come together. And if you are thinking about taking care of others, it really does relieve everybody's anxiety. So, you know, it's the first thing Tracy did this morning. You know, she talked to our youngest daughter and said, you really need to talk to your boss and see when your last shift is going to be, when they're shutting down. And then she, you know, texted our other daughter and said, you know, same thing. Are you at home yet? And she lives alone. And so I completely anticipate her moving in with us for a little bit, because, you know, who wants to just sit in an apartment by yourself? And so it's kind of down the line, we're checking in and taking care of people who are closest to us. And what a great opportunity. I mean, this is why you see division and politics fade away in times of crisis, when appropriate leadership is you know, encouraging that. And I really think that's the opportunity for everybody. You mentioned you know, washing your hands, not touching your face. I see every single thing in society now kind of tipping through different thresholds. And I saw this article written by somebody in Italy who went through kind of a week-long diary. Like, day one, it's no big deal. It's just, you know, I'm young, I'm healthy. Day two, this day, and you go all the way to day 7, and it's a full-blown panic. And I feel that with people who are joking about it, making light of it, saying it was a hoax, to okay, maybe it's you know, now all of a sudden it's, you know, we're all on the same page. And, you know, I'm glad we're here, but I think now is the opportunity to just say, look, we are going to get through this. If you look at historical data, like from the Great Depression, I think 20 to 25% is a good threshold for people to understand. And you were getting ready to segue into more practical ways to manage this disruption. You know, the stock market's already down 20%. The Treasury Secretary said, you know, unemployment could reach 20% for a short period of time. And I think if we all look at our lives, look at our jobs, look at our incomes, and say, okay, if things go down 20%, you know, how can I manage that? Let's start chipping away with what that would look like. And I really think socially, collectively, Kori, if everybody just moved down to that level pretty quickly together, life goes on, but we're all operating at the same place. And what I mean by that is, if employers know we're gonna see a 20% hit, and so I would still like my staff and people to make at least, you know, a livable wage, so we can go down to that level. And then if you know, goods and services are 20%, and the government's talking about paying, you know, dividends, monthly checks to people to get through this, you know, that's really how we need to approach this, and understand that this is incredibly likely. Even during the Great Depression, that was the level, 20 to 25% unemployment, something that we consider one of the greatest crises of humanity. And we're gonna get there pretty quickly, but that's probably as bad as it will get. We'll ride it out, and then we'll start making a comeback. And I think that kind of distance, you know, consideration is important to keep us from focusing on just fear and anxiety and panic in the moment.
What are you doing currently, Joe? Can I ask you that, on a practical nature?
Well, number one, I'm, you know, as you've seen with our coaches and program owners, you know, giving as consistent information as I can. Here's how we can keep taking care of clients. Not only should you rightly be concerned about your own revenue and sustainability, but consider their needs. That's probably the best way to meet both. but also, yeah, just to get ready for these types of disruptions and what's next. Personally, as I mentioned, we're talking to our children, making sure that they're going to be okay. We're getting our home ready for that. Tracy's talking about her business and when the last day she's going to be open. We're just doing all of those things, just checking them off one at a time. She's offering free shipping to people who still may need things. We're doing some similar things in our company, even though we don't have essential goods or services, one would argue, or at least making them, more accessible. Like I said, I want to move. I made that decision yesterday to reduce our prices by about 20% across the board on things, because I do expect that to be that level where society is forced to live. And I want to play my part. I want to say we're here. We're going to keep doing everything we possibly can to stay in normal operations, but still help everybody we can.
Yeah, I think that's super important. And on top of that, it's to remain in communication with other people who are planning and wanting to do the same things. We don't have to be operating in isolation. We do have the means to be communicating from thousands of miles away from each other and to be collaborating towards those efforts. Yeah, I see, today I'm having, just with my private coaching group, we're getting together via Zoom to have a conversation and just check in with each other and see how we're doing and to see how we can support each other. It's not even going to be related to nutrition. Just let's connect, guys, because we all need to. And, you can vent and you can share your frustrations, and, the entire goal of it is just to help each other out and support each other through this time as best we can. You had mentioned earlier too, Joe, just having a plan. And I think that in times of difficulty and fear is very, very important. And part of that plan, yes, there's the strategic, what actions am I going to take on a day-to-day basis and right now to stay grounded instead of looking so far into the future, but a plan for when I start to feel like activated emotionally, what am I going to do? Who am I going to call? Who might I talk to? But just simple things, Joe, like remembering to take a breath. One of my clients, because I talk about box breathing, which is you inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4, repeat a few times. She sent me via Facebook Messenger it was a graphic. It took you through it, like breathe in, and it was a countdown, hold 4, 3, 2, 1. It was really cool. And I think little things like that sent to the people who we love as reminders, they're important. It's the connection, I think, with our loved ones and the people that care about us that is going to get us through this sort of a crisis.
I was able to record a podcast with Adam Martin yesterday that will probably be releasing today. And we wanted to talk about looking at this as a chance for opportunity. And I think that's a great way for us to close today, is to remind people that, yes, we need to mitigate fear and anxiety, make sure everybody's taking care of each other. But as you start planning, if you're one of those people who are getting out the pen and paper and saying, okay, what's the worst case scenario? What are we doing to mitigate that? This is a time where society by force reshuffles the deck in a lot of ways. And one of the populations in the news a lot now are the weekly, hourly workers who are bartenders, waitresses, people like that, who are now just off work. They're just done. They don't know what's next. Society will find a way to make sure we all survive. That happens. And I'm very confident in that. That's when we pull together at our best. But it's also a time for you to start getting your resume together, to start looking for other opportunities. What are the industries that are going to make the fastest comeback first? How can you be there and say, look, this may be a blessing in disguise. I may end up in a better place. This is a chance for me to say, was I even doing what I wanted to do anyway? I get to stop and reevaluate that right now. And I look at some of the other things that are going to be positives. If we're home, I'm going to be playing basketball with my kids. We're going to be taking a walk. You know, Trey takes like a 5-mile walk every day. I'll get to join him on that once in a while. We'll get to share this together, and the kind of modeling with our, you know, kids who are still at home. What a great learning opportunity. I mean, there's just so much that could come out of this in positive directions if we're willing to consider it, plan for it, and actually be the propulsion for it.
I agree. I feel like we're tuning into because yes, we have this innate drive to survive, and fear and disgust can be very real and come up very quickly. But we also have an innate drive to be collaborative and connecting, and and to cultivate that sense of belonging. And amidst that drive to be fearful, to survive, there's grit and there's determination and there's resolve that we can also like really muster up and utilize in situations like this.
Well, you are invaluable to a lot of people, Kori, and I'm glad you are willing to tackle this conversation. Not easy, but very relevant and important. And you are the inner voice for a lot of people, including me. So that inner Kori voice, a lot of people talk about in my circles, and I appreciate that. So, guys, we're going to continue with information as we can. We're certainly not the greatest public health officials where you can get your frontline information, but things that can help you plan and prepare for the future, maybe mitigate and sort through some of the things you're dealing with as well. We're going to keep trying to. I mean, I don't think we have any reason to stop this, Kori. We can do this from anywhere.
Absolutely.
So, all right, guys. So we'll see you next time in the Life Mastery Podcast. Feel free to share this. Anybody that you think is having a difficult time and needs a little positivity and practicality in how to move forward through this, send them this link, because we love to make sure people are doing well and being safe.
And thanks, guys, just real fast, for all the comments that we're getting on these podcasts. To know that you're listening and taking it in and passing it along is really important. Just another way of helping us feel like we're actually connecting with people during this time. Thanks.
Yep, absolutely. We'll see you guys next time in the Life Mastery Podcast.